Hi guys, we're here again with Frank Fridays. I am your co-host, Ellie Hayworth. I'm the founder of Hayworth. And we're here joined today by Karline Moeller, our amazing co-host and the founder of Art Frankly.
Thank you, Ellie, and happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday indeed. Guys, we're very excited today. We are speaking with a very esteemed interior architecture and furniture design firm. The principal is Rodrigo Albir, and he's joining us today. So, Ro, it's really nice to see you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Ellie. Great to see you and great to meet you, Karline.
Yeah, we're super excited. So I think we really just wanted to start. We're spotlighting, your Miami-based design firm. And in our minds, I think some of the itching questions that we always have are, what are some of the principles that, in your opinion, make for great design?
Sure. So some of the principles that, in my opinion, make for great design is a well-established concept. I feel like that provides the base for what the design will be based on, not to be redundant, but when you have a clear and concise and established concept, it just allows for the rest of the pieces to fall into place, and then the design somehow organically starts evolving, and you kind of set the parameters to what the project or the design should be based on.
And I think, so one of the things that really entices me and kind of brings me back to Studio RODA is, all of your projects are really bespoke. So I think, to your point, you do look for like a very unifying kind of concept for each project, but they're all very tailor-made to either that client, whether it's a residential concept or it's a more commercial concept. You do a lot of research in terms of the local community and where this piece is going to be within time and space, and sometimes even history. So maybe this question is, having said all of that, it is perhaps a little bit contrarian to what I just said, but if there is like a unifying principle to your projects or something that keeps kind of guiding you, what are some things that you feel is like consistent about your practice and is a unifying principle?
As you had mentioned, we try to be to create these tailor spaces that are unique to that specific client that we're working with. Besides doing research, either it could be informed by the architecture of, let's say, if it's a home, that we are renovating. Besides researching the architecture, we try to understand the client's lifestyle and their current, are they a family? Do they have children? What's their day-to-day living? Do they travel a lot? Are they active? We are, most of our projects are residential. So that residence needs to be a unique space that is a functional space for the people that are going to live in it, so the clients, they're going to use it day to day. So it needs to be something that's informed by their lifestyle. And then the bonus part is the design and the aesthetic, and we want to obviously make it beautiful, but it needs to be beautiful and appealing and functional to them, to the final end user. So I feel like that's what helps us create these very different, unique projects from, I always get asked a lot, what is the aesthetic of Studio RODA? And I always reply, well, our aesthetic is what the client wants it to be, because I feel like our role as designers, also as problem solvers, we shouldn't give the clients a project or a design that they could have done themselves. They could have just gone to some showroom or somewhere, and it needs to be unique to them, but it needs to be very well curated. And we need to kind of show our range in curating pieces and creating solving these interior architectural problems that need to be solved in the space. And that's how we create these spaces that are unique to the end user.
Yeah. A pressing question that I feel like comes up often. In your opinion, Rodrigo, how do you distinguish between interior design and interior architecture? I think those are some vocabulary terms that are actually quite emblematic of a different perspective on a brand. So maybe you can tell us, you guys are interior architects. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you?
It's a misconception here in the US. Interior designers are able to call themselves interior architects in Europe, and a lot of them use that title. Here in the US, unfortunately, there's some AIA regulations that interior designers are not allowed to be called interior architects because it gets confusing with the whole architectural role. I think the difference that you want me to highlight is more in the interior decorator versus the interior designer, interior architect. The interior designer, interior architect are more formally trained. They more specifically, they went to some sort of design school, have learned the tools and the tools and the like the software tools or technical tools or some sort of like studio conceptual like formal training, you know, to get to practice as interior designers or interior architects. Interior decorators, in my opinion, are people with great taste, talent, and don't need specifically a formal training, but shouldn't venture out to do what interior designers do, because that's when it causes problems, because you do need some technical training to understand spacing, adjacency, and kind of how setting up a space. But I feel like that's the difference. You know, a decorator is more person that styles, decorates, finds great furniture pieces and puts them together, curates them, you know, and creates a great composition, styles great vignettes. An interior architect or interior designer is more technical, and it's more about renovating the space, creating the space plans, bubble diagrams. You kind of like rethinking how a space should work internally.
And I think, in my opinion, that kind of ties back, or at least for me, the distinction ties back to, you know, you guys have a very kind of holistic skill set. And so it's not just, you know, how do you style the living room, but rather how do you like re-envision the home, the flow, the way that these different rooms are in dialogue, the materials that you're putting on the walls. You know, there's utility, but also there's a science to some of that. So I think that's one of the things I like to spotlight when I'm making that distinction.
Well, I mean, coincidentally, I graduated from Pratt, and I graduated with a master in science. It's very technical. It can be pretty demanding in the technical side. There's a lot of things you need to keep in consideration, and like dimensions and measurements, and kind of like how a space works and how a space flows. That unfortunately you can't really learn that by just having good taste or being able to put a nice room together. But don't get me wrong, like even us at Studio RODA, when we need to finish off a project and top it off, we're looking for stylists. and you know, because you need those fresh pair of eyes, you know, because our projects run between 2 to 5 years. And at the end, we're probably like visually exhausted with the project, that we can't see it in a different way. And when we bring in a stylist or an interior decorator, you know, it just helps us kind of like refreshen the project. So there's ways that there's a process, you know, that happens, and how all the different professions come together at the end.
Oh, well, thank you for asking that question, Ellie, and thank you for your very clear response. And that was great, Rodrigo. I'm married to an architect, so I know that the lexicon can get very confusing very quickly, and the skills are dynamic, to not understate them. And that actually leads me to my next question, which is, tell us about a project that you've recently completed that was super successful for Studio RODA. You've done so many amazing things, so share with our community a little bit.
Sure, thank you, Karline. A project that we recently completed was, there's an area here in Miami Beach that a lot of New Yorkers are having to move in. And it's these 2 older buildings that have beautiful views of Biscayne Bay. And this client purchased 2 units, and we had to join them. So that's when our like, let's say our quote unquote interior architecture skills came into play, because we had to create a new floor plan, a fresh floor plan, joining these 2 spaces and how we make them work successfully, you know. And so that was a challenge. while we were working during the demolition, we realized that there was a big concrete wall that actually we had to redo our plan to in order to connect, because where we thought we were going to find a connection wasn't really there when we went through the as-built of the building. So it called for bringing engineers and re-engineering, and then using fiberglass engineering to create this different structure setup to actually do a 4-foot pathway between the both units. And but at the end, it paid off. It looks amazing. The clients are extremely excited. We photographed it a couple of weeks ago, so actually a couple of months ago, and we're very excited to show off the photos. We haven't been able to because they're going to be published, so we still have to wait to share that with you.
I know how that works, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can share them with us when you're allowed to. I'm sure our community would love to see. That's exciting.
I would love to.
Oh, great. So with that being said, can you speak to us a little bit about how the Miami design scene has changed over the last few years?
Yeah, so I feel like the Miami, going back to Ellie's question about interior designers, interior decorators, I feel like the Miami interior design scene has become more professional, in the sense that you have a lot more people with that technical background popping up. Part of it, I think it's been because we've had this migration of New Yorkers, people from Toronto, kind of coming from the north. So it's uplifting the profession in the sense of you're having clients demanding for that technical training, or that professional being more prepared to handle technical problem solving when it comes to space planning. So I feel like in a sense, so I came back to Miami from 2014 from New York. And I feel like since then, there has been this big shift of a lot more professional, well-rounded interior designers participating in this sector of the industry here locally, and therefore getting a lot more unique projects. Before, I felt like when I first got to Miami, every project looked very similar. It was just a lot of Italian furniture, very predictable, but now it's you're getting a great, fantastic mix, and people are not afraid of being unique, and the clients are demanding more, and I think it's very exciting, and it's a great time to be in Miami, obviously, because there's a boom in real estate, and a lot more people are here. The traffic is terrible now, but it's elevated the profession as a whole. It's elevated it, but also it's set the people that are technically trained apart from the rest, because the expectations of what an interior designer should do have become higher.
I can absolutely attest to that. I can say also, not being in the profession, but being kind of a pleb looking at it, but an informed pleb from the outside. And you certainly see there are more cultivated tastes and perhaps more educated tastes that are also coming in. And therefore, I think the output is becoming a bit more unique and more polished, and certainly more refined, I think. Exactly. I agree. Well, I think this was a really great conversation. We're happy to have had a little break from our workday on a Friday. So Rodrigo, we're super excited to have chatted with you. We certainly are staying tuned for those photos once they publish, so please keep us posted.
I will. I'll let you know.
Yeah, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was I really enjoyed it, and talk to you soon.